Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Their pharmacists are here to help, offering a wide range of vaccines including flu, COVID, pneumonia, and RSV immunizations. Visit your local Safeway or schedule online at safeway.com/pharmacy.
With Election Day right around the corner, Jefferson County has come up with a clever way to try to get you to participate. If you live in Jeffco, you can get a special I voted sticker that's scratch and sniff. They apparently smell like democracy. Now, there's no word yet on whether democracy smells like victory, compromise, or maybe something simpler like cherry. But hey, if it gets people to the polls, maybe it's just the scent of success. I'm Haley May. Coming up, Colorado prisons are overcrowded.
If you could imagine, you live in your bathroom, and now they put in another person in that bathroom with you, and the two of you have to live in that space.
We'll talk about potential solutions. Plus, dark money from out of state has entered a local school board race.
All this money coming into these races makes it messy.
And this could be a golden year for Colorado sports.
We hope it can be, a double parade year for the Nuggets and Avs.
It's Wednesday, October 22nd. Here's the news in Colorado today. Yesterday, you heard about how staffing shortages at Denver's jail are creating risks for inmates. In fact, jails and local law enforcement all across the state are overwhelmed.
We're holding sometimes between 30 and 50 inmates in my facility that are sentenced to the Department of Corrections and should be in the Department of Corrections.
Weld County Sheriff Steve Reams says he shouldn't have to house these inmates locally. Editor Kyle McKinnon with KUNC and the Colorado Capital News Alliance has been reporting on this. Kyle, can you get us up to speed real quick?
So Colorado's prisons have been running near capacity for years, but this summer things hit a breaking point. For 30 straight days, the prison system here was more than 97% full. Advocates think we're in the midst of a push for mass incarceration. Even at a local level, we've seen things recently like Denver Mayor Mike Johnston, as well as some other mayors, who have asked law enforcement to arrest more people for petty crimes. So there's a public attitude component of sorts here. Maybe the biggest causes of this overcrowding issue, there's more people being sent back to prison for technical or minor parole violations. I'm talking about things like missing an appointment, failing a urine test, or, breaking a curfew.
This stricter enforcement on those types of parole violations, is that something that's relatively new?
Essentially, yes. Kyle Giddings helps run an advocacy group called the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, and he was formerly incarcerated himself. Here's what he had to say.
The parole board made an internal decision that they're going to start enforcing these technical parole violations more strictly, and it's causing the prison population to explode.
As for what's behind that decision, it's not exactly clear. According to state prison data that's available and a state audit from May, we know that this is a subtle decision that happened within the last couple of years without any sort of announcement. Corrections officials have said that this is about accountability and public safety, but this also kind of goes back to the attitude piece of things I mentioned earlier and this tough on crime, mass incarceration push. There's also no oversight for the Department of Corrections. There's no oversight panel or commission that oversees them and holds them accountable. So Governor Polis and his appointee to the head of the Department of Corrections would have to make that change.
Okay, so I want to get back to the county side of this. If counties are handling more inmates because of the state's decision that allows it when state facilities are overcrowded, it just kind of seems like it's moving the burden along. And we know that local sheriffs aren't really happy about that.
No, they're not. Jails, smaller jails, I should say, are holding or have a backlog of dozens of state inmates who should be in state custody. On the extreme end, we're talking hundreds, with figures even tipping 1,000 inmates that are backlogged.
So we know how the sheriffs that are running these facilities feel, but what about the inmates? How is this overcrowding impacting them?
So I spoke to David Carrillo about this. He served nearly 3 decades in various prisons across Colorado and actually ended up becoming one of the first incarcerated professors to teach other incarcerated students. And that's something he's still doing. He teaches economics to incarcerated students.
I went in at 19 years old. I was, a teenager when I went away. Now I'm a college professor. I'm a consultant. I'm an author.
And Carrillo has seen a lot of disruptions to his classes because of severe overcrowding.
If you could imagine, you live in your bathroom, and now they put in another person in that bathroom with you, and the two of you have to live in that space. And that problem then snowballs into other issues.
Programs and classes are canceled. Movement in general is just restricted, as David described there. And one correctional officer that I spoke to that works at Sterling Correctional, which is the state's largest correctional facility, Sergeant James Carr, told me even inmates close to parole say they don't even feel ready to re-enter society because they haven't been able to finish their classes and programs that they think are necessary to ensure that they have the best re-entry experience possible.
We know that this is a problem on multiple levels. What's the fix?
There's no single fix, right? I would say Kyle Giddings with the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition and other advocates say the issues start with corrections. First, they need to loosen up their enforcement of minor parole violations. They need to find ways to hire more staff, but really there needs to be some form of third party that oversees corrections and holds them accountable. Obviously, the thing that's also looming large here is that the state needs to put more resources and funding towards this to create more beds, to add more staff, to strain prison and jail systems. But we'll see in January during the regular legislative session if there's a political will and an appetite to address this issue.
KUNC's Kyle McKinnon, thank you.
You're welcome, Haley.
Out-of-state millionaires and billionaires are trying to shape a school board race in Colorado. And whether you mind comes down to if you think the reform policies they're pushing are good for kids. CPR education reporter Jenny Brundin has been following the money and joins us now. Jenny, we're talking about Colorado's largest school district, Denver Public Schools, where the majority of the school board seats are up for grabs. So why are we seeing outside donors getting involved in local school politics?
Well, Haley, for decades, school board races were pretty sleepy affairs. But over the past several years, they began pouring money into races. They see it as a way to advance specific strategies in schools. In races outside of Denver, groups are hoping to move the needle on ideological issues like curriculum and parental rights. Denver Public Schools, it's not this same kind of ideological battle. In Denver, an early driver was support for expanding charter schools, which are independently run schools that get taxpayer money. So right now, we're seeing big contributions, hundreds of thousands of dollars, from groups that do not totally have to disclose their donors, what we call dark money in politics. What that means is if you vote in Denver, you may get glossy flyers or see social media ads for certain candidates, but it's often hard to trace who's really paying for them. And that's raising questions about how transparent these local races really are.
So what do you know about where the money is coming from this time around?
The biggest spender so far is a committee called Denver Families Action that's raised more than $700,000, mostly from a group that gets its major funding from the City Fund. That's backed by billionaires Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, and John Arnold, a Texas philanthropist. Both those men have supported school reform efforts all over the country and also backed major Democratic political campaigns.
So have outside groups like this put in money before?
Yeah, back in 2023, donors backing charter school interests outspent teachers' unions 5-1. And in that last election, 3 of the 7 union-backed candidates on the board were defeated.
So the teachers' union is generally on the opposing side. Do they have a dark money group where they don't have to disclose the names of donors too?
Yeah, the teachers' unions, both state and local, back a different set of candidates. The teachers' union dark money group so far has not spent on the Denver race. It's spent on races elsewhere like Colorado Springs D11 and Jefferson County. The unions have given money through a separate traceable committee. They argue whatever source the money comes through, it's largely individual teachers.
So is the issue as simple as a divide between these two camps, one being charter school advocates and the other being the union?
Well, years ago, there was a clear-cut divide on the charter school issue. But today, 10 out of 11 candidates say they don't have a problem with charter schools. People are split over issues like whether they think DPS is headed in the right direction, whether they support the superintendent. Regardless, all this money coming into these races makes it messy.
And Jenny, what are the concerns about this year's outside donors?
Well, it's an issue of whether these donors really have local interests at heart. I've spoken with education analyst Van Scholes, and he says it's gotten to the point where no one has won a Denver school board seat in over a decade without the help from one of the big money groups.
Wow, okay, so what is each side saying about the money in the races this year?
Denver Teachers Union President Rob Gould told me that when there's been so-called education reform in the past, it's brought instability. So less teacher voice in curriculum, a pay system for teachers that's caused them to leave high-need schools, and schools filled with novice teachers that were closed because of poor performance.
We don't want to go back to some of the reform policies of years past. I mean, those years from 2012 to 2019 when we saw a 20% turnover rate year after year.
On the reform side that backs candidates who support a new direction for the school board, Clarence Burton Jr., who runs a Denver nonprofit, says their spending helps reach voters in a race that most people usually tune out of, especially people who might not have kids in public schools.
Our North Star is making sure that every kid in the city of Denver has access to a great public school.
Are there any ideas to make the funding for these races more transparent?
Yeah, Van Scholes, that education analyst, and others would like to see public matching funds, like what Denver has in city council races. So small donors' contributions go further. And maybe even expanding the school board from 7 to 11 members, so campaigns can be smaller and more neighborhood-based. But even supporters admit that might not stop the flood of outside money.
Okay, and ballots in these races are due on Election Day. That's November 4th. CPR's Jenny Brindine, thank you.
You're welcome.
You might still be on a high from the Broncos' historic win on Sunday. They scored 33 points in the fourth quarter in a comeback for the ages. But they're not the only ones making headlines. The Avalanche are having a hot start, and the Nuggets kick off their season tomorrow. Both teams have big expectations.
And you know what? We're going to have it right now that I have the Colorado Avalanche winning and being the 2026 Stanley Cup champion.
Denver Nuggets 2025-2026 potential starting lineup.
And this Denver team is much deeper and much more talented than they were last year. And that is why Denver is my championship favorite.
Harrison Wind from the Podcast Network and live events group DNVR is here to talk with us about both teams who call Ball Arena home. Harrison, let's start with the Nuggets and the anticipation building for tomorrow. Why are experts so high on the team this year?
Well, I think it starts with the fact that they have the best player in the world still. I mean, Nikola Jokic is still at the top of his game. He's still the most feared player on the face of the earth. And he's set up to have another historic season probably. And I mean, the great thing about following the Nuggets is that you turn on every Nuggets game. You don't know what Nikola Jokic is going to do that night. He could do something historic and you just don't know it's about to happen. So they have a great team behind him, but it starts with him. It starts with him and Jamal Murray. You got two top 40 players there. Most importantly, if you have Nikola Jokic, you're always going to have a shot.
Let's talk a little bit more about the Joker. There was kind of a scare this summer when he didn't sign a contract extension, right?
It was a little bit of a scare just because it would have been cool to have him sign the extension and for sure locked up in Denver for the next 5 years. But Nuggets fans shouldn't really worry. The real reason he didn't sign it was just because he can make more money if he signs in the next offseason.
Right, and we got a little bit of a reassurance in a recent press conference this fall when he said this.
My plan is to beat Nuggets forever, so that's my answer. Nugget forever, or Nuggets never. No.
Nugget forever, we love to hear that.
Absolutely, and I mean, I just know from covering him for all these years, I don't think he wants to play for another team. I don't think he wants to go through the stresses of moving a family to another state. I think that's a real thing with him that he doesn't want to deal with.
So now Jokic has an even better supporting cast around him, and there's a different coach supporting the team this year. Michael Malone is out, and the team's assistant coach, David Adelman, who helped them finish out last season, is taking the helm. Harrison, how do their styles differ?
David Adelman's a younger, more X's and O's driven guy, somebody who's going to be quick to make adjustments, somebody who's going to be willing to experiment with things during the regular season that Michael Malone probably wasn't. And he's also, a guy who has a better connection with the locker room and with players. He wants players to police themselves, whereas Michael Malone, he kind of wanted to be, a dictator in that sense and really kind of rule with an iron fist. It worked great. I mean, it got the Nuggets a championship, but it was clear that they needed a different voice.
So the Nuggets start with that new voice tomorrow. And so we're kind of dreaming right now about this possible NBA championship parade in Denver. But there could be another title contender in Denver. That's the Avs. Can you just give me like the water cooler version of why that team is good this season?
Yeah, well, it starts with the same argument I used for the Nuggets. They have probably the best player in the league, in the world, in Nathan McKinnon, the best defenseman in the world in Cale Makar. So they've got the star power for sure. And the thing about the Avs also is they have more depth this season than they've had in years past. And like the Nuggets, that's been a reason they've had these early exits in the playoffs the last couple of years. They just have not had the depth. So we're joking here at DNVR, trying to speak it into existence. We hope it can be, a double parade year for the Nuggets and Avs.
Hey, man, that would be awesome. We'll wish them luck. We do want to mention they're honoring their history tomorrow, calling back to a time before their move to Denver when they were the Quebec Nordiques. That means Northerners in French. And when the puck drops, they're going to be in these special jerseys commemorating the anniversary of their move to Denver and honoring their Quebecois past. Talk to me about that.
Well, the jersey's really cool. I saw it today. Somebody brought one into the office. It's super clean. The color blue on it is awesome. So I'm excited for the Avs to mix that in. Nuggets and Avs have some great alternate jerseys this season. The Nuggets have the black skyline jerseys, which are, an all-time favorite. So I think it's something that the fans are going to absolutely love.
Awesome. Well, Harrison, thanks so much for being here. That was Harrison Wind from the DNVR Nuggets podcast. And Denverites written up the cheapest ways you can watch the Nuggets play on TV this season, given all the issues in recent years with TV rights. You'll find a link to those tips in our show notes. Well, it's a good reminder that there's always something to cheer for in Colorado. Make sure to follow and share this podcast with your friends for more local stories like that one that lift your day. I'm Haley May. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can shop online and get easy delivery or free pickup. Get the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Shop the weekly ad, clip deals, and earn points at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.